Hopefully my presentation will give you a little bit of break. It's less abstract, it's more engineering concrete, and your brain can relax a little bit, hopefully. This is a fragment. Maybe I can say we are halfway there, and this fragment is from an interview which Nobel laureate Jack Szostak gave to a New York Times reporter. And the answer was in regard to his progress on research on the origin of life. And the question was, how far have you gotten in regards with his progress? He was well known by making some significant progress in the potential explanation of the origination of the natural origination of the cell membrane with bilipid layer and so on. He published papers in those areas. And so the question is, how far have you gotten? And he said, maybe I can say we are halfway there. He supported this by, we think that a primitive cell has to have two parts. First, it has to have a cell membrane. There can be a boundary between itself and the rest of the Earth. And then there has to be some genetic material which has to perform some function that's useful for the cell and get replicated to be inherited. So not too much, lay half of the way and just a little, another half, and we'll solve the problem. Here is a link to the full interview. And the above answer prompted me to think about how can I get some empirical, probably personal, objective knowledge on what the simplest self-replicator might look like. And I started on a path to develop some insights into internal design of simplest self-replication. So this abbreviation stands for simplest self-replicator. And another goal is to, once I develop some insights, build some model, how can I make some evaluation of complexity of such an artificial SSR. And again, I'm talking about an artificial SSR. We know that all the cells, trillions and trillions of the cell of different simple cellular organisms and multicellular organisms are real self-replicators. So in a way, in my thinking process, I was thinking of an artificial self-replicator. Assumptions: there is an intake of materials from outside of the SSR. There is an output of refused materials from inside the SSR. These assumptions are modeled from the real world single cellular organisms. And we assume throughout that we design for building an artificial SSR. They need not have a biological basis. It can have, but not necessarily. So it's not built with carbon-based chemistry, but it's rather a clunky one, made from metal, plastic, semiconductors, whatever other material. And now, why this hypothesis? Later you'll see that I believe that we humans, engineers and scientists, we do not possess the tools, the capabilities to build pure synthetic artificial SSRs at the scale and with the material base of biochemistry. We are lacking insights, tool, and ability. We can do play some games similar with what Craig Venter did to move the DNA from a single organism to another one, but that's not a real creation from scratch of an artificial SSR. Very few requirements. SSR has an enclosure, as Szostak himself said, to separate it and protect it from its environment. And SSR is capable to create an identical copy of itself. And this characteristic is inherited by the daughter SSR, the granddaughter, and so on. And here is a schematic illustration of a SSR. There is an enclosure. There are some mysterious components. There are some processes or capabilities or functions within the SSR. And what happens during replication in a very simplified way? There is a cloning phase in which the original internal components of the SSR are one by one or concurrently replicated with some mysterious machinery, and also the functions and capabilities inside are replicated. So at the end of the cloning phase, we have a replica of the mother core components at the south pole, not necessarily at the south pole, but for the sake of illustration. And then the cloning phase is followed by a division phase. In division phase, the two parts of the growing SSR are separated into the mother cell and daughter cell. At the highest level, what are the phenomena which happen within the SSR? Input raw materials and parts are accepted by input enclosure gateways. Input materials are processed through material extraction into good materials, which are used for fabrication of parts or for energy generation. Energy is generated and made available throughout SSR for whoever needs to consume energy in order to do its job. Fabrication function starts to fabricate parts, components, and assemblies for cloning, creating the copies of internal elements, for creating scaffolding elements for the growing SSR interior. So I assume that there are some scaffolding elements which maintain the three-dimensional structure of the growing SSR, or creating new elements that are added to the growing enclosure. So I see the three parts, the enclosure, the scaffolding, and the core, the inside elements. And when the cloning of all original SSR internal parts completed, the SSR division starts. And division is characterized a little more in detail here. The original SSR content is now, for example, at the north pole of the enclosure. The clone SSR content, the nascent daughter SR, is now at the south pole. And then some division happens at the equatorial plane. And in this way, the separation of the mother and daughter SSR emerge. So there is a fundamental question. How an artificial SSR is able to clone accurately all its internal parts? And not only internal parts, but the enclosure and the scaffolding. And possible answer, one might be by using a mechanical copy process. Similar with that use when you duplicate house keys. Let's assume that there is a quite miraculous key copy machine, which is able to take every part and copy it with fidelity. A second alternative, it's a little more pretentious. This can be accomplished by using internal result information in combination with computer-controlled automatons. And looking by the mechanical copy process, this is illustrated key copy machine. And I believe this is the wrong answer. For various reasons, let me summarize. I believe that not every part can be easily disassembled. Or even if you want to disassemble, then you might need to have a very intelligent disassemble machine. You need to have another machine to remember how to assemble them back. You still need to have some information representation, geometrical, spatial representation, or how to assemble the pieces in non-geometrical XYZ positions. Another reason for this is that cloning is not only a process of fabrication assembly. Sometimes fabrication implies using certain processes. Another thing is that copying can be very difficult of, let's say, internal parts. If you have machining, it's difficult to copy internal profiles and 3D holes and other things. Or you need to have a very sophisticated machinery for this. Okay, so I embrace the second option, and think to the following thing. The SSR is a very sophisticated automaton. It's autonomous. This means that it doesn't get any help from outside. What it gets from outside is just matter. So it needs to be self-sufficient. In order to be self-sufficient, to know how to make a copy of itself, I do not see any other reasonable solution based on our, let's say, pragmatic day-to-day experience and my experience as a software engineer, that it needs to have a very detailed formula very detailed information regard to all the parts, bill of materials, construction plans, processes. So in order to proceed to have a successful formula for cloning. So I believe that a single reasonable solution is to see the SSR as a complex combination of robots which are driven by information and kind of computer-like and software-like processes. And I believe that that's a correct answer, and quite possible a single correct answer. Thinking further down on what kind of functions and capabilities need to be present, I developed this diagram of functions, which I'll talk one by one, but let's just enumerate it this time. There is an input flow control functions which manages what substances or raw parts are accepted inside the cell. There is a material and parts identification function which assists the input control function to be an arbiter, a filter, to say, oh, this material is good, no, I don't accept this material inside the cell. Just think a little bit how trivial or how complex such function might be. Does it use chromatography, is using weight analysis, is using spectral analysis, need to be self-sufficient. There is a transport function which moves raw materials and parts from one place to another, from input gateway to transportation, or from assembly place to the fabrication place. There is a materials extraction function which takes some raw materials and let's say generate the materials which are good for fabrication. I'm using maybe a rough example. You get iron ore, and you, for some process, you generate iron or steel, some special processes. This is an example of material fabrication processes. There is an energy generation function, and there is a supply chain function. This is similar with the fabrication, which ensures that all the input materials and energy are needed to fabricate a piece A are available to the fabrication centers. So, and provide a continuous steady flow and control of supply materials to the fabrication processes. There is similarly an output flow control function, which control what gets outside of the cell. There is a recycling function. There is a information management function. There are several of them. Bill of materials, which tells for every part, every assembly, including the top level SSR, what is a list of parts from which it can be constructed. For example, for part X, you need 2 parts of type A, 3 parts of type B, and 2 kilos of part material C. There is another information function, this construction plan, which is like a house construction plan, but it's for every piece. It tells you, unlike the bill of material, it's give the formula, the specific processes, and geometrical information, and all the other information, placement, how do you build a house. Very detailed information. There is also the fabrication capability, fabrication function, which is very complex. Fundamentally, you need to have ability to fabricate any type of machinery, and any piece, any part of any type of machinery which exists in the mature SSR. There is a manipulation function. It's like a robot. It's a function, ability to grab things, to handle them, to rotate, to move from to put them on a conveyor line, and so on. There is a construction status. Construction status is a kind of shadow of the construction plan. It's used to monitor, to mark the progress of construction of the clone. How far you progress and what needs to be done, so you have a monitoring, continuous monitoring ability. There is a scaffolding growth function. There is an enclosure growth function which controls scaffolding and enclosure, how it grows. There is a fabrication, control, and assembly. These three functions are higher level functions which control the lower level functions. There are two top level functions, cloning, which monitor the cloning phase. There is a division which monitors the division phase. And the top level function is replication, which has phase A and phase B. Throughout, there is also a communication and notification function. Communication basically is used by the command center to send to the execution center, do this thing, take this information and take this action. Notification function, maybe the execution center communicate back to the control center, I did this, or this is an event. There might be some other relationship between functions which I didn't figure, didn't I paint it in the picture. And here, input flow control, I'm talking about this function. We talk about this. Input flow control open closes the enclosure gateway, acts based on the nature of input material and commands from other function. Material and parts identification, I touched briefly about this. Again, this might be a non-trivial function. Identifies the nature of input materials and parts. And more than that, tags input material and parts, manufactured materials and fabricated parts with type ID. So another important thing is the following. The SSR need to have a parts and material identification systematic and consistent system, so that just imagine that each part has a barcode or a RFID tag. Just another complexity here is the following. The certain materials might not be solid, might be liquid or gelatinous or chemical things. You might need to have bins and containers and a way to tag each material. So complications here. Material extraction function we touch uses specific processes to extract manufacturing materials from raw materials. Sometimes uses specific machinery for particular processes and particular parts. Input flow control function I try to illustrate here with this picture who the Queen may see today would allow in. Maybe he might not allow anyone today. The enclosure gateway is closed at this time. Here the question is, what is the material the bottle is made of? It is chocolate, but just imagine that the challenge is how to do it automatically. And all the diversity of material and to say, oh, this is chocolate, be sure that's chocolate, so you can process with the chocolate processing machine. Yes, but the challenge is to have a robot find this out by itself. Material extraction function. Energy generation function is responsible to generate energy from raw or processed materials, responsible also to distribute, transport, and manage energy, electricity. It might use special machinery, generator, transformer, converters, and an open question, what is the material basis of energy generation? Can be fuel, oil, coal, chemical, atomic. More recently I read about micropower. There are new emerging technologies for fluid, energetics, and so on. Transport function, transport materials and parts, components might use containers, conduits, wire, carriers. If you use wires, we need to have a way to fabricate wires. Transports also energy and information. Supply chain function, ensure steady supply of materials, energy, coordinating and scheduling capability. Recycling function, reintroduce useful materials and parts in the fabrication cycle. Select materials and parts as refuse, and also clean spaces. You need to keep some cleaning in your environment to do not mess up or degenerate the core. Auto flow control functions, send refuse materials, control output gateways. Bill of materials, we talk about this, somewhat implies a exhaustive catalog of all materials and parts. For each element, composition, sub-elements, material construction plan, we talk about this, exhaustive catalog of construction plans for every level of part, component, or assembly. And also is a catalog of all processes involved. catalog of all procedure, to assemble, to clean, to whatever. Construction status function, we talk about this. Status updated by notification, communication. Manipulation function, we talk about this. Maybe implemented with a robot arm-like machinery or multiple robots. Fabrication function must be able to fabricate any and all SSR parts, in particular able to fabricate all SSR machinery. Fabrication control basically coordinates the fabrication to achieve higher level objectives. For example, fabrication function, you can see that know to build any part, but fabrication control know to how to build assemblies for 10 minutes. Okay. Communication notification, we talk about this. Scaffolding, enclosure growth. An important thing here that enclosure changes geometry, it's a variable geometry. So the way the elements of the enclosure need to manifest sort of flexibility, elasticity, and mobility. Cloning function choreographed the cloning phase. Division functions, and an important point for the cloning function, copies in information catalogs and software into the daughter cell before division. Division function, start the engines of the daughter SSR before actual physical division. Replication function is highest level function, implements the designer commandments which are grow and multiply. Okay, here is another copy of the diagram. Now, what we learned about artificial SSR. SSR must be designed for growth and division. The enclosure must support changing surface, volume, and shape. Must contain detailed structure, cohesive, descriptive information that must be accurately and integrally passed to next generation SSR. Required information, materials, manufacturing materials, bill of materials, procedure and processes, construction plans for all fabricated parts, all fabrication processes and procedure, all assemblage procedures, all recycling procedure and processes. SSR must contain advanced materials and parts identification capabilities as well as material extraction capabilities, must contain sophisticated, fully automated computer control capabilities for energy generation transport, must contain very sophisticated fabrication and assemblage capabilities, which are information driven for full automation, must possess advanced computing information processing capabilities as well as good information communication capabilities, must control its many parts and layer function through very advanced software running on SSR computer-like machinery. One thing which I don't know if I mentioned. So if you have computer-like machinery, we need to have real computers. We need to fabricate computer circuit boards. We need to fabricate most probable semiconductors, memories. So a fab, a semiconductor fab inside the SSR, unless someone tells me that we have quantum computers or we have biological computers, these are only subject of the scientific papers for 20 years from now. The design, so another point, SSR must be based on a very sophisticated design that harmoniously, precisely, and completely provides full automation and self-sufficiency for all machinery and processes that happen inside the SSR during growth, division, and replication. The design of an SSR can be successful only if it is harmoniously integrated and precisely coordinated with the design and characteristics of its environment. This is very important. If you have no clue about the environment, you have no chances even to think of designing an SSR. And you think about the environment might be the Earth design, the planetary system design, and also dependency. The galaxy design, all the laws might be the former immediate. It appears more and more that a special designer, a master designer, is only able to do this type of design. An artificial SSR most probably must contain a material mining subunit, a metallurgic subunit, a chemical plant, a power plant, an electricity distribution network avenues, alleys, and conduits for robotized transportation, a semiconductor manufacturing plant, a computer manufacturing plant, an extending communication network connected by wire or rather wirelessly, all plants and robots. A software manufacturing plant and software distribution and installation agents, a materials and parts recycling and refuse management plant, an army of intelligent robots, a highly sophisticated distributed multi-layer software system that controls in a cohesive manner all plants, robots, and communication. Okay, evaluating the complexity of an artificial SSR, it's important, it's autonomous, computerized, and automated. I believe there are no comparable real engineering artifacts in terms of autonomy, materials, energy fabrication closure, full manufacturing automation, spectrum of processes and fabrication types, no successful attempt so far on building a real autonomous artificial SSR from scratch. There are numerous attempts and the technology makes significant progresses. There are many fronts on which the human imagination and engineering progress. And there are some remarkable developments in software simulation of self-replicators, cellular automata, self-replicated software entities, simulation. I mentioned RepRap is a self-replicated 3D printer, but unfortunately only the kind of trivial things are replicated, not the printed circuit boards or even the metal bars which connect the linkers. There is a self-assembly, there are self-assembling Lego robots. There are significant developments in micro-electromechanical systems. Craig Vender's synthetic bacterial cell is another very interesting development. Comparing a genuine artificial SSR with an advanced car, let's compare a genuine artificial with an advanced car manufacturing assembly line. On the assembly line, most parts are fabricated elsewhere. It's not fully automated, many manual operations performed by humans, no material identification, material extraction capabilities. Not so many process technologies involved, mostly an assembly operation. There might be some fabrication, but it's rather non-representative. Let's compare it with the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland from a narrow perspective. No fabrication there, not comparable in terms of automation process diversity. Maybe the Hadron Collider is better in certain areas in terms of number of pieces, but even that is not sure. The Martian rover, some good amount of autonomy on the rover, but it has no fabrication. 2 more minutes. And some thoughts about the origin of life research and what we found so far. Any credible explanation for materialistic generation of life need to answer this question: how the self-describing information of so many varieties residing in SSR originated, how the energy generation and transport function originated, how the material identification function, material extraction function originated, how fabrication function originated, transport and manipulation, how the coordinated control of various functions originated, how the whole sophisticated design of the SSR originated. It is reasonable to believe or accept even that the SSR resulted from random natural processes where the 21st century scientists are only beginning to understand only some of the internals of the cell. I believe we are still at the beginning of revealing the tremendous complexity of the cells and the living world. Is it reasonable to believe, accept that the SSR resulted from random natural processes when the 21st century scientists and engineers are still not able to design and create an SSR, an artificial SSR? NASA has an advanced automation for space mission in 1980. The idea is to transport with rockets the seed of a lunar factory, which will weigh 100 tons, later 1,000 tons. Not all machinery could be built on Moon. They needed some vitamins, some seeds, for example. Computer circuit boards, electronics could not be manufactured there. The project anticipated as being feasible in 21st century. Though this study is one of the most realistic in terms of complexity, what type of machinery and plants need to have. There was another project where Robert Freitas was the leader or the author, colonizing the galaxy with some very ambitious probe. was a mammoth self-replicating spacecraft to be built in orbit around Jupiter. REPRO was a vast and ambitious project equipped with numerous smaller probes for planetary exploration, but its key purpose was to reproduce. Reproduction cycle was 500 years, to believe that. Our Earth was seeded with a wide variety of SRs. There are an estimated 9.7 million species of organisms, varieties of SSRs, plants, animal, fish, insects, bacteria, as self-replicator on planet Earth. The total number of self-replicating machines, very complex machines, each one of them, and some of them are complexes of SSRs. A human body has trillions, hundreds of trillions of cells. So the organization of systems of cells is even another mind-boggling aspect of the. So it's estimated the total number of organisms is 10 power 30, maybe more than that. I know the number of bacteria is estimated to this number. There are strong dependencies between the design and existence of certain type of SR, cell replicators, on the design and existence of other type of SR. So there is a tight coordination of dependencies between, there is ecosystem, which are tightly dependent. For example, the number of bacteria living within the body of the average healthy Homo sapiens are estimated to outnumber human cells, 10 to 1. I just read in the newspaper on the flight here that they identified over 10,000 types of bacteria which live within the human body, and for an adult of 200 pounds, the estimated weight is about 4 to 6 pounds of bacteria. And here are some examples of these cell replicators of various types. And here is a metaphysics of it all. A reasonable scientific hypothesis is that the master designer designed wisely all SSR types for this successful cohabitation of the Homo sapiens SSR with all other types of SSRs. More so, it is hypothesized, I believe scientifically, that the Earth, the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, and the whole universe was designed by the master designer so that Homo sapiens has a comfortable place to live. More so, besides having a comfortable place to live, Homo sapiens have plenty of SSR types to study and to marvel at the fabulous skills of the master designer revealed so blatantly in his SSR designs. More so, besides having amazing engineering feats to discover and admire, the Homo sapiens has a rightful master designer to praise and worship all his life. That's it, the presentation.